who was harder to deal with, Kyle Busch or Tony Stewart?
I knew that was coming up. He goes, now who's your driver? And I went, we don't have one. John Riggins made me famous.
Yes. You know, Coy got me in as much trouble, or I got myself in trouble. Okay.
I saved your life. I would call the girlfriend and say, where's Tony?
Welcome to Kevin Harvick's Happy Hour, presented by NASCAR on Fox. And today we've got a legend of many sports, NFL, NASCAR, Joe Gibbs. And I can't wait to, some of the stories that you have, I just, it's so much fun to hear and think about the guys that have driven for you, the players that you've coached, and the championships that you guys have won in both sports. So thanks for taking the time to come talk to me.
You got it. Everybody around the race shop are tired of my stories. So I'm glad I could get someplace where I can share a few of them and you actually think they're funny.
Well, I do think they're funny. And, you know, I think that let's just start at the beginning because, you know, I think it's important we have a much different generation, newer generation of fans than when you started this sport. So how in the world did you go from NFL coach to NASCAR owner?
It was actually really crazy. I was born right here in right up in the other side of Mooresville. And so I was raised in North Carolina, had nothing to do with race cars, football, basketball, and baseball. Moved to California when I was 16. My family did. And honestly, it was a great time to grow up out there. It was hot rods, drag racing, and I was football.
Yeah.
And so I fell in love with cars. Wanted to drag race. I had everything from a gas coupe, gas dragster, top fuel dragster, built a top fuel dragster. Thank goodness I blew it up when, right off the bat, didn't have enough money to put it back together. But I fell in love with cars at that point. Yeah. And so then I go all the way through, started coaching and moving all over the country. JD and Coy came along. And when JD graduated from college, he said, Dad, I'd rather do something in racing. Could we do something in racing? And honestly, Coy was right there. And I said, well, we don't have enough time to try and find a sponsor. We'll just put a dream on a piece of paper. And that's what we literally did.
Wow.
Showed up on Norm Miller's doorstep, Interstate Batteries. I still remember the meeting. And he goes, now who's your driver? And I went, we don't have one. Oh. He goes, now where's your race shop? And I said, we don't have one. He goes, I said, Norm, this is a dream on a sheet of paper. And I was honest with him. And I say to this day, Norm is the only CEO with enough guts to step out and go racing with a football coach.
Yeah.
And so that's how we kind of started. And Norm, we just signed our last contract with Interstate Batteries. It'll take us through 34 years.
My goodness.
And we're best friends. We got all kinds of stories. We've vacationed together. But it's one of those great things about racing. The thing that baffles me about where we are, the first year it was one car, 17 people, and it's got Jimmy Maycar to be the crew chief. And it was just get that car ready. I figured this is easy. It's going to be a hobby. And it started growing. And today, I said, we're racing 9 cars, 3 different divisions, 450 people, and it's totally out of control.
Yes, so it is definitely a different world. So back up to this dream. It's yourself. So who did you watch NASCAR, or was this JD?
I loved all forms of racing. Okay. I had a motocross bike, race some motocross stuff, most some drag racing and stuff. Loved it all, and just kind of fell in love with cars. Period. Watched NASCAR, of course. Never dreamed I would have a chance, to get in it. People told me, they said, "Hey, if you want this thing, Rick Hendrick, is the guy you may want to talk to." I found out he's a big Redskin fan. Invite him to a Redskin game. That's a great story because he almost froze to death on the sideline. But Rick let Jimmy Johnson, at that point, was his GM, help me. And that's how we kind of got started.
Gosh. So that is, I had no idea that it was just on a piece of paper and you didn't have anything. So
Yeah,
did you
we
go
had
get it? I mean, you just started looking for shops and said, we're going to.
Yeah. We leased a place on Harris Boulevard, right down here, right down the road.
Okay.
And didn't, never thought that we'd be able to talk like Dale Jarrett. We were kind of interviewing people. And I remember Jeff Gordon, they said, you need to talk to this kid. And so I'm over to him. I remember he walked in the room and I went, I'm used to football. You get big guys when you invest in something. And I looked across there and he looked like he was 12.
Yeah.
I said, I'm not giving that guy a race car. And so I talked Dale Jarrett into coming on board. And then I never thought we'd have a chance with Jimmy Maycar, but Jimmy really started us off. I just let him have everything.
What were the biggest challenges that you guys faced together right there in the beginning, getting it built?
Yeah, I think just getting it started and talking people, but it was much easier in those days. You're trying to get 17 people. Today, I really feel because for people that want to start, because you got to get 60, 70 people to get off the ground. Much easier that way. But we got people that Jimmy's still in our meeting this morning.
Yeah.
He's still there. Robin is still there. We still get, we give out 30-year awards, and it's great. That's my dream, is to the people that work there. I want it to be something successful so they get to spend their entire life there.
Yeah. So you go from NFL coach to team owner. What was the biggest difference from being coach at one to coach at the NASCAR team, from coach on the sidelines to coach in the office?
Okay, the biggest difference was that really frustrates me now at times. In football, I could kind of make it happen. I was designing and working on the offense, calling the plays. So I was a technical guy. I grew up in it. Okay, so I could kind of, hey, something's off. I could make it happen. And when I moved over to racing, it was totally different because I didn't grow up in racing. I wasn't a technical person. I can't set a car up. And so here, I really said, I got to be smart here. I can't do the technical stuff. So I need to work on picking the people, working with the people, getting our sponsors. And I say the biggest thrill I have is the first of every month trying to pay the bills. But it's totally different, but it's still the people. And so that's where I kind of, try and keep everything paid for and going in the right direction. But it was two different worlds. You asked me, what's the challenge? I get frustrated a little bit when things in racing, if it doesn't go, I tell Chris Gabehart and our crew chiefs, I say, I get frustrated because I want to make this happen and I can't. And so I think that's the biggest difference. Now, in the two sports, it is so similar. You can't believe it. In football, you're not going anywhere if you don't have what? Quarterback.
Yeah.
Over here, not going anywhere if you have a driver.
Right.
Okay, so that's the same thing. In football, you want to have a coach that really knows what's going on, hopefully. Over here, it's crew chiefs, same thing. And then it's the people. The only difference over here is the car. Many times that thing doesn't behave.
Yeah.
But it is, the two sports are really, really a lot alike.
What was the hardest NFL player situation? I have to imagine that you had an NFL Tony Stewart, NFL Kyle Busch. Who were those guys on that NFL side that you coached?
We did have. I tell a lot of stories about John Riggins, our big fullback, because he was a real character. And he had set out the year before when I got there in a contract dispute. I just got on a plane when I got the job, flew to Lawrence, Kansas. I knocked on the door. And right away, I knew I had a chance to get him to come back because Mary Lou, his wife, was there, hairs up and rollers, and kids running through the house. And she said she wanted to come back. Yeah. The only way you get a football player to do something, find him or get his wife to come. I went out the next day, started the sales pitch. I still remember it. And he was giving me nothing. He sat at breakfast across from me, and I'm sales pitch, young coach, John, new offense, put you in the backfield. I'll give you the ball and never down. I'll never ask you to block.
Yeah.
I'm a salesman. You expect me to tell him the truth, do you?
Yeah.
So I'm going as hard as nothing. And about halfway through that conversation, he leaned across the table and he goes, "You need to get me back there. I'll make you famous." He went just like, and I went, "Oh my gosh, he's an egomaniac." I said, it's a nutcase. I'm going to get stuck coaching a fruitcake.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking to myself, how do I get out of this? And I went, trade him. So I just finished the sales pitch. I go back to Washington. I get a phone call 2 days later. It's from John. He goes, "Coach, I'm going to play. I'm coming back." And I went, "Yeah, get him back. Trade him for a first. This is awesome." He goes, "There's only one thing I want put in my contract." I said, "What's that?" And he said, "A no trade clause."
Gosh.
Now, the moral of that story is John Riggins made me famous.
That's right.
So it's stuff like that. John was a real character. There are a lot of characters in both sports where I've been. It fascinates me because, I love that aspect of it. Everybody kind of kidded about me in football being milquetoast because I was always, thinking about calling plays. You're not running around throwing a fit. You're calling plays. But I really love that part of team sports. The characters, the guys that are joking, I hear guys.
And it takes all kinds. It takes the jokesters. It takes the serious guy. It takes the guy who has no clue and doesn't pay attention in the meetings. Whatever it is, it takes them all.
It takes everybody. And it's the thing that never changes is human nature.
Yeah.
Everything else changes in sports. I said 30% a year in football and racing, if you think about it.
Yeah.
One thing that doesn't change is human nature. The same things excited us 1,000 years ago, excite us today, discourage us today.
So one thing that I talk to a lot of our young drivers about, I talked to Keelan about it, and I never won as much as a lot of the young kids did coming up because it was different. You raced different than what they do now. How did you get used to not winning most of your games? Because in racing, you have to be, you don't want to be satisfied, but you have to be happy sometimes with a third place and a fifth place. Yeah. And that's the part that a lot of people don't understand is you're going to lose way more than you're going to win. How did you adapt to that when you came into racing, realize you were going to lose more than you win?
I got to tell you, it was really hard for me. Think about this. I was very fortunate. I got the right place in football, the right staff, the right players, So we went to a Super Bowl the second year I coached. Okay. So I come down here.
Yeah.
9 years. 9 years. You talk about this sport is really, really hard.
Yeah.
And so as you know that well, but yet I think the thrill of it is it really is hard.
Yeah.
And for instance, in our case, we're trying to get 4 teams to work together. I love that part of it too. And, football was the one team. Over here, it's trying to get 4 teams together to work together and then go to the racetrack. And then everybody's kind of after it on their own for their sponsor and their career. But I love the fact I get up every morning with the challenge. Hey, we get to go. I get a race against Roger Penske, and Rick Hendrick, and Jack Roush, and all these guys. And so I get a kick out of it. It's fun to compete, and I love it. I love it as a sport. I think it's absolutely great. And the other part of it for me has really been rewarding. Both of my boys, JD and Coy. JD worked in it all the way up. Coy was, when his brother got sick, stepped over. So the boys, I missed them a lot in football because I just couldn't be there. A lot of football just kind of eats you up. But here I had a chance to spend time with JD and Coy. And so now that they've gone to be with the Lord, I got my grandkids. I got the first 3 or rock and roll. They're in the middle of it. Yep. And I got, I got another 4. We're going to see what they're going to do. So I actually 5. So we're going to see. I got one granddaughter. She's awesome. She's horses and everything else. She may be the boss of everything for us over with Elle.
Well, I think that's probably the natural progression from the female side in my house. It's Piper first, Delana second, and then myself, and then Keelan. So that rank becomes pretty natural across the board with the moms and the daughters of the household to be in charge. So
Yeah.
Coy got me in as much trouble, or I got myself in trouble. You remember that when Coy and
Yeah,
I went at it
this.
at Martinsville?
I'm gonna tell you the honest truth. I
Okay.
saved your life.
You did?
You don't know this. Yeah, I did.
Oh, I can't wait to
when
hear
you
this.
got into it that day,
Yeah.
where were we? We were
Martinsville.
Yeah. I think. Yeah, I remember this. You put that truck right up against NASCAR, and
That
of course
didn't go over well.
that didn't go over well.
Not at all.
And then Coy, when he got out of there, Coy said, "I'm gonna get him someday." I said, "Hey, we can't be doing this in the sport." So anyway, I don't know who would have won that fight.
Yeah, probably Coy.
I think it would probably. I would put the odds on Coy on
I
that
would
one.
agree.
He outweighs you about 100 pounds. So, yeah. But I do remember that. I remember those early days. I used to joke with you all the time.
Oh, yeah.
I don't remember you would come up with the funny comments about other drivers and stuff, and I would kind of. Then you backed off for a while.
And you
I
used to
remember
razz me
walking
about
up
that.
to you, and I said, "Hey, what's the deal? You get lobotomy or something? Come on, let's get back with the funny stuff."
And I think that for me, that's the part that's very unique about our sport. You have these interactions when you're just smashing heads with people over disagreeing on races or these or this or that or whatever it is. But it's such a small community that you have to figure it out, between people. And you always joked with me about that. But I mean, it's to me, you have been able to deal with some of the craziest, toughest personalities in the sport. And I obviously know Tony Stewart really well. Tell me how that got started. How did you go and find Tony Stewart? He was in an IndyCar, and you were at the at the beginning of your Cup owner career. How'd you get him out of that IndyCar into a Joe Gibbs Racing car?
I think it's a great story, and because we were sitting down with, at that point, Shell, and we were talking about future drivers and stuff, and so we had kind of all seen Tony, and I just said, I had a meeting with them, and I said, "What do you think if we could get Tony Stewart?" They freaked out. They get Tony Stewart. That's who we want. Well, he had a contract with Harry Ranier at that point. And so I start trying to chase him down. So I can't find him half the time because he's all over the place.
Yeah.
And so I finally found he had a girlfriend at Indy. And so I would call the girlfriend and say, "Where's Tony?" And she would tip me off, and I would find. About the third time I call her, she goes, "No." And I went, "Oh my gosh, that's over."
Yeah.
So I lost that. But I kept after Tony, kept talking to Harry, and I says, could we work a deal here? And finally talked Tony into it. I will say this too. Tony really understood himself, and he said, "Hey, Joe, I'm not ready for Cup. That was my problem. They wanted me to drive Cup, and I'm not ready."
Yeah.
So we put him in Xfinity. I don't know if you remember that or not. That man wrecked more cars.
Yeah.
And sometimes he would wreck 3 times. I would say, "Hey, just park it after the first time," for crying out loud. And didn't win a race.
Yeah.
Matt Kenseth beat him at, I think it was Rockingham,
I think so.
It was the closest that he came. I kid Matt. I said, you moved him out of the way. He goes, "No, it was legal. It was legal." But put him in the Cup the next year, and he was gone.
Yeah.
Really great. And at times there were things that came up, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, but we kind of handled him. I tell you, the great thing about Tony, whatever the mess was, okay, the next day, he honestly would say, what I got to do? Tell me, the sponsor, what I got to do? I got to pay money? What do I got to do? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, but it was really, really enjoyable. with him, and he helped us really get started.
Oh, yeah.
Now Dale Jarrett gets us going, Bobby Labonte, and then we get Tony, and so it was great. I enjoyed him a lot. He's good sense of humor. He's funny. I'll tell you one of my funny stories on him. So he comes to me. We're building a new race shop. And he goes, I got something I want you to do for me. And I said, what's that? He said, I want you to put a sauna in the new race shop. And I went, what? And he goes, yeah. He says, I'm going to put a stationary bike in the sauna, and I'm going to train myself in the sauna. And I said, really? Because
this must be the time that he decided to go around with the personal trainer, and he had the guy that was
no,
feeding him.
This was before then.
Before then.
Okay, so he said to me, he says, I'm going to work out right now. I said, really? So he left. And of course, I put the sauna in there. So about 6 months later, I don't think he'd had but one workout since. I said, I saved myself $30,000. I didn't put that sauna in there. But Tony was just a real talent. I got to tell you, when he wanted it,
oh yeah,
he was hard to beat.
Yeah, and I think when you look at Tony Stewart, I think he drove some of my Xfinity cars as well. And one of the great stories about Tony, we were at Richmond sitting up on the pit box, and Tony was running 9th or 10th or whatever it was that day, and the next lap, no car. Car didn't come around, no caution, no nothing. And I'm like, where did my car go? And so Tony has decided it's not running good enough, and he's done with it. He took it to the hauler, parked it, never saw him. He just left. And that was the end of that race. He's like, thing was garbage. Like, man, we can't just pull in. But he just did those Tony Stewart type things. And it's the same thing. You couldn't be mad at him, because on Monday he's like, man, I
could get mad at him every now and then. But
what's the closest? Did you ever come close to just saying, I'm gonna fire your butt? No. Yeah.
I never did that. But it was, there were some scrapes that we had to get out of.
Even on the other side. So who was harder to deal with, Kyle Busch or Tony Stewart?
I knew that was coming up.
Yeah,
because I normally get to Kyle Busch and Tony. They were both very super talented.
Yeah,
and both of them a little bit alike, and they were all kinds of stuff. Yep. They were kind of into all kinds of stuff. Houses, buying racetracks, Tony, all the different things he was in. And Kyle a little bit that way too. But really, both of them, I really appreciated their talent, the way they went after it for us. Both of them. Like if you get Kyle, he's got a great sense of humor. You get him in a social setting and stuff.
Or a couple
I
beers
laugh a lot.
Yeah.
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 But both of them really talented. So obviously that was great for us. And, we every now and then there was some challenges.
Oh yeah.
But really they helped build our race team. Yeah. They really did. And I appreciated both of them so much because they won a ton. I got to tell you, Mars is an example. When they got in the sport, they'd been in like 8 years or something, had won 2 races.
Mm-hmm.
And the first year we put Kyle in that thing, I remember that. We got him signed up. He won 7 races the first year. Things like that where you just can't, can't imagine how important that was for us.
Yeah. Well, it was great times, and one of my favorite times. I mean, I love Tony Stewart like a brother. I mean, we became great friends through the years and competed hard against each other. Kyle and I are social friends here and there, not quite like Tony, but I appreciated the competition that was always presented with Kyle Busch because it was in trucks, Xfinity, Cup, and it didn't matter what you were racing.
Yeah.
He wanted to rip my head off, and I wanted to rip his head off.
Yeah.
I wanted to beat him bad, and he wanted to beat me bad. And it went through those years of just that head-to-head competition that just made us better racers. And the drive behind both of those guys, was unique, but very, very good for their situations and the success that they had in their moments. So as I've learned, you love strong competition as well, because that's really why we do this, is to compete. I loved to compete and beat the guy in the garage next to you, and that to me was something that both of those guys did well.
We know how hard this is.
Yeah.
This is really hard.
Yeah.
A hard sport to break in, and then to kind of see what those guys did.
Yes.
And you did. You just got to realize how much you got to appreciate that.
Yeah.
I do. And, I just think we were blessed to have those two guys with us.
Absolutely.
And so we got a history there. Bobby gave us our first championship. Dale got us started, got the ground floor. And then, to where we are today with the guys that came after that. We've had fantastic guys that have driven for us. I haven't mentioned the others. I won't try and mention everybody because I'll miss somebody. But, that's one of the exciting things about our sport is, as hard as it is, and the fact that our sport is different and that you got to have a sponsor.
Mm-hmm.
They're more than a sponsor. I think they're partners, really.
Have to be.
What I look at, they have to be.
Yeah.
They have to be. And both of, the guys that have come in the past for us and drove for us, keeping the sponsors happy and doing all the things that you got to do there. It's just really, really, it helps you build a race team.
Yeah.
And as you know, building a race team is really, really hard.
Yeah.
And
it's a constant evolution because this guy leaves, that guy changes, this works, that doesn't work. It's this big chess match that you have to constantly push stuff around. So let's talk about next gen car, where we are today. Where do you think we are as a sport? We just went to Mexico City. Do we need to do stuff like that? What's your opinion on some of that stuff that NASCAR kind of is starting to kind of push the limits of where we go, what we do? Is that good, bad? What's your opinion on some of that stuff?
I think it relates all the time to our fan base.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's so important. And now we're kind of focused on some of the things with streaming and what have you, younger generation. How do we attract them and yet keep our fan base, our core group there? So I think that is kind of where we are. I think for me, I really enjoy what Ben's kind of done, being in the Coliseum. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That to me, we haven't done much since then with the stadium, but it did open up a whole new world.
Right.
If you think about that.
Yeah, you
we
can build
could
a
go
track
in
in
other
any stadium.
stadiums.
That's right.
We could go to New York.
Yeah.
We've been begging, trying to get to New York as an example. I kind of mentioned that to him, But then the street racing. I was excited about that. And I got to tell you, when we, Chicago, I thought the fans loved it. We had rain, messed us all up. They didn't care.
No.
They were there. And I felt like both of those races were a real huge plus. And now I think, we're talking about some other road racing in the country.
Mm-hmm.
So I love that. And so I like stepping outside the box. We've got our core racetracks, but I really think we're in a good place. Gen 7, totally different, for us. In the old days, we came up, somebody was making our chassis, and then we started looking at it and said, well, we can probably make this better than they are. So we started making the chassis, and then we go from, so we had all of that we were doing. And then we went Gen 7. So that is definitely a different wrinkle.
Yes.
But to me, I think our sport, here's what I think about our sport. I hope that we'll continue with the idea of we want to reward the best team and the best driver every single weekend. That is what our fans want. They want to see, they know how hard it is. And they want to see somebody for the weekend challenges. So anything that kind of holds us back, on any of that. I'm hoping that we stay focused on, because we all in pro sports look at something. We've all driven cars. We look at that and we can picture ourselves in the car. But really, when you see somebody at 180 miles an hour,
yeah.
And, I got in once or twice. I got in at Charlotte. I thought I set a record.
You were driving?
About 120 miles an hour. I thought.
It felt like you were going 200.
Yeah, I felt like I set a record, man.
Is that the only place that you've ever driven that
Listen,
fast?
I was terrible in all sports. The only award I ever got was most improved.
Yeah.
I figured I better coach, and I better get in team sports, because if I get in individual sport, I'm going to get killed.
Yeah.
So get in team sports around some real good team players, and then take the credit when they do something good. And I'm still doing that with the race team.
What's the best race that you remember for your team that you won? What was the one moment that sticks out to you as an owner? I know they're all impactful, but there's one that's always a little bit.
Well, there is one. And we started our first year, didn't win a race. Dale Jarrett's our driver. And so JD had come on board, my son, with Todd Meredith and Dave Alpern, who's now our president.
Yep.
All young guys. I gave them to Jimmy Maker. I said, find something for them to do. And so they take off. JD wound up on the pit crew for the second year. And because the second year was, 93 Daytona 500. And I'll remember this forever. And so that race starts, and we're pretty good, The next thing you know, we're up close to the front. Now, I got my son is on the pit crew, very first race.
Oh, boy.
Okay. And so all of a sudden, I start going like this. I go, oh, my gosh, this could come down to the last pit stop. Okay. And so sure enough, it comes to the last pit stop. And so this is what happened. Todd Meredith was carrying the tire. In those days, we did left side tires. And JD was doing left side. He goes over, does the front tire, goes to the back, hits about 3 lug nuts, and they drop the car, and the car's gone. And he stood up like this, and Todd says, I looked at him and I went, did you get those tight? And JD goes, I got 3 of them tight. He goes, can we go on that? And JD looked up at Jimmy Makar, and Jimmy Makar's nickname in those days was Mad Dog.
Yeah.
Okay, so he looks up at Jimmy and he looks back at Todd and he goes, we're going to find out. Because he was not going to tell Jimmy. And can you believe we won that race, beat Senior?
Yeah.
And honestly, Norm Miller, our sponsor, I still remember he had a T-shirt on with a big picture of Dale Jarrett on the front of it. Our boys are rolling in the infield. We don't even know where Winner's Circle is. So they're wandering around. We finally go into Winner's Circle. And so I'm in there for about 10 minutes, 15 minutes. They throw champagne and stuff. And I figure, well, hey, that's the end of this. I didn't know you're supposed to go to media.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't know anything. I look over and the trophy was there. And so I just grabbed the trophy and Pat, and I said, come on, with the boys, let's go. I didn't know we were supposed to do anything else. We go out, get in the car, go out, took a head down towards the beach, and there's that Steak and Shake down there on the left. Yeah. And so the boys go, hey, Dad, we're hungry. Let's go in Steak and Shake. We pull in Steak and Shake. There's about 100 fans there, and a few of them have had a few
beverages.
They spot that trophy. They spot us. We spent 30 minutes in the parking lot taking pictures with Steak and Shake. And every time after that, we've won.
Going to Steak and Shake.
We're going to Steak and Shake. You'll know where to find us.
That's right.
So that win, though, was our first. And I think it kind of said, because I was questioning after the first year, is this too big for us? Should we be in this? Or it just verified a lot of things. Norm, Interstate, can't thank them enough. Dale Jarrett won that thing and everything that took place with it. It was kind of got us going.
Yeah, and JD got the tires tight enough.
He got 3 lug nuts tight enough.
Yeah.
We got that.
Yeah. All right. I have one last question, and we
Okay.
ask everybody on this show. And I have a feeling with your car interest, it's going to be good. What was your first car, and where did you get it that you drove on the road?
I remember my dad said to me, he said, "Hey, look, we're going to get our first car. We're going to the junkyard." Went to the junkyard. It was a 49 Mercury. And I still remember it was up on blocks. We paid $150 for it. Get tires, put it on it, took it to the house, sanded it down, painted it blue, pretty dark blue. And in those days, we had names.
Yeah.
My Blue Heaven.
Yep.
49 Mercury. That thing is running someplace today. I will promise you. It just went forever.
How long did you keep it?
I probably like 4 years.
Okay.
And I remember my dad was so disappointed in me. I worked one whole summer and I put side stacks on it. You know
Oh,
what I mean?
man. Oh, yeah.
I spent my whole summer money with the side stack. The flippers.
Yep.
Remember the flippers? You're too young.
Yeah.
But those were great days. Lowered it. And I remember my dad came out and he goes, "What's that?" I
You
said,
have ruined this car.
"Those are side stacks." And he goes like this, "What'd that cost?" And I told him, and he went just like this. He went, "Good God." He turned around and walked off. But that was my first car. And then I got off into hot rods. I had all kinds of 37 Chevy. I had all kinds of hot rod stuff.
And you worked on them, or did you just buy
I worked on them.
Yeah.
None of them would run after I worked on them.
Yeah.
Pat and I got towed out of every parking lot in Southern California.
Yeah.
But loved it. And I fell in love in cars. That's with the hot rod stuff. I absolutely loved it, working on them and everything. And then I mentioned the drag racing stuff.
Well, it all makes a lot of sense now, the passion that you have for cars and everything that you do in NASCAR. But I want to thank you for taking the time today. I know that you've been a big part of this sport, and we appreciate everything that you do for NASCAR racing, and congratulations on all the success. But I knew everybody listening and watching would love some of these stories, so thanks for telling them.
No, you got it. Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate you having me on.
Thank you.
I love our sport.
Yeah.
Love our fans.
Well, thank you.
You got it.